The poor can't play here. The words ripped through the crisp morning air outside the gates of Hawthorne Elite Range. They came from a rich kid draped in a $4,000 designer hoodie pointing at Emma Clark, a 34-year-old woman in a faded army jacket, an old M1 Garand rifle slung over her shoulder. She walked forward silent. A smirking receptionist stepped in her way. VIP lanes aren't for the lost and confused. Laughter erupted. A girl live-streamed the moment. Did housekeeping take a wrong turn? Emma said nothing. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a VIP pass worn at the edges but gleaming under the sun, an heirloom from her father, Colonel Clark. The scanner beeped green. She walked through wordless, but her eyes cut deeper than any insult. They laughed. But 10 minutes from now, they'll stand frozen. 10 perfect shots will silence them all. Hawthorne Elite Range wasn't just a gun club. It was a cathedral of precision and power where the wealthy fired bullets polished like jewelry and sipped espresso between shots. The building shimmered under the California sun, glass steel and silence. Inside, black marble floors reflected sharp LED light. Each shooting lane gleamed with chrome and custom wood finishes. The walls were lined with gold-framed portraits, Olympians, generals, billionaires, children, all with eyes as cold as their groupings. Access required more than a fee. It demanded bloodlines, influence, or war medals. This was where senators' sons trained beside Silicon Valley's heirs, where athletic prodigies received private coaching in $10,000 gear. Every name on the leaderboard carried legacy. And today, into this world of engineered dominance stepped Emma Clark, faded jacket, worn rifle, quiet eyes. She was an anomaly, a glitch in their curated reality. But none of them realized, sometimes it's the oldest weapons that shoot the straightest. Emma Clark didn't walk like she belonged here, but she didn't walk like she feared it either. At 34, her beauty wasn't polished, it was earned. Auburn hair tied back in a practical braid, freckles soft across a face carved by wind and silence. Her faded army jacket hung loose sleeves rolled. No logos, no glitter, only purpose. Slung over her shoulder was an M1 Garand wood, worn smooth metal dulled by time. Not a museum piece, but a memory. It had belonged to her father, Colonel William Clark, a legendary sniper whose kill count ended wars. He'd taught her to shoot before she could ride a bike. Breathe with the trigger, he always said. Feel the stillness. Let the world disappear. When he died, she made a vow to shoot once more, not for medals, but for something that couldn't be bought. And today, that vow walked into Hawthorne. The first time Emma held the rifle, she was 6. Too small for its weight, but her father knelt beside her in the woods, guiding her hands like a sculptor with clay. No headphones, no digital targets, just wind in the trees and the sound of breath. "Don't fight the rifle," Colonel Clark had whispered. "Let it teach you." Their range was a clearing in Tennessee backcountry cans balanced on fence posts, pine needles crunching underfoot. Rain or shine, she fired. Missed. Fired again. Until the rifle stopped kicking and she stopped blinking. She never aimed to win, only to understand the silence between heartbeats. When cancer took her father, he left her nothing flashy, just a folded flag, a journal filled with numbers, and this rifle, and she'd carried it every day since. Not as a weapon, but as a promise in wood and steel. Today, she brought that promise into enemy territory. Emma didn't need a welcome sign to know she wasn't wanted. As she stepped past the velvet rope, silence spread like smoke. Eyes turned. Phones rose. Whispers sharpened into verbal razors. Her boots echoed on marble-soft thuds against a floor polished for legacies, not outliers. A boy in a white tracksuit smirked. Did the janitors get weekends off now? Someone snorted behind him. A girl whispered into her phone. She looks like she walked here from 1945. They saw the jacket, the rifle, the calm, but they didn't see the miles she'd walked, the graves she'd stood over, the discipline in her silence. To them, she was a museum exhibit lost in a modern war zone. To her, they were just noise, and noise never hit center mass. She didn't need to be seen. She only needed 10 bullets. By the time Emma reached the lounge, her presence had already gone viral. Hawthorne's internal live stream, usually reserved for medal-worthy precision, was now a digital firing squad. Screens lit up. Comments flooded in. Welfare. Shooter spotted. Did she steal that rifle from a museum? Hope she doesn't shoot herself. A teenage influencer zoomed in on Emma's boots, captioning "thrift store drip." The crowd wasn't quiet anymore. They laughed with intent, every chuckle crafted to humiliate. Vanessa Cole, the resident sharpshooter/model, raised her voice just enough to catch the live stream mic. Look at her jacket. Did she mistake this for a scrapyard? The room howled. Emma didn't flinch. But somewhere far away, in a hospital bed, her mother's eyes welled with tears as she watched the feed. Emma stood still, steady as steel, but her silence was no longer just resolve. It was armor. Emma had faced storms before, but this was curated cruelty. A tall man with slicked hair and a headset stepped forward. Derek, the front desk manager voice dripping with mockery. VIP access must be malfunctioning. This isn't a community range. He waved at her M1 Garand like it carried disease. You really bringing that thing in here? What is this Civil War cosplay? The crowd chuckled. Emma stood motionless, eyes locked forward. Then came the real blow. Professor Laura Vance, senior coach, strode out in heels sharper than her tone. Diamond earrings, designer blazer, and a smile forged from contempt. Hawthorne holds standards. Ms. Clark, she announced, gesturing at the rifle. You are not one of them. Polite claps. Laughter beneath breath. Phones still rolling. Emma adjusted the strap on her rifle fingers, calm. Her face didn't move. But inside, the steel was tightening. The laughter hadn't even died when Connor Blake, son of a hedge fund king, stood and stretched like a bored lion. He sipped his energy drink, then leaned against a marble column, grinning. So, what's the deal? He called out. You gonna polish the targets or shoot them? His clique erupted in laughter. Emma didn't look at him. That only made it worse. Ethan Caldwell, Hawthorne's crown prince. Athletic, arrogant, with a $60,000 rifle slung across his shoulder, stepped forward. I'll make it simple, he said. Voice silky and loud enough for every camera. Beat me, and I'll leave the range for good. He paused, flashing teeth. But if I win, you're out. For good. No takebacks, no VIP excuses. Gasps, cheers, phones raised. Emma looked at him just a glance, then nodded. No words, no bluff, just one look that made Ethan blink. The game had started and she hadn't even loaded her weapon yet. Ethan stepped into lane 1 like he owned the floor because he did. The cameras followed. His rifle, a sleek black monster with gold inlays, rested gently in his gloved hands. His gear was tactical chic, tailored to perfection. He loaded without looking. No wasted motion, no nerves. The screen above lit up. Shot 1, 10.0, shot 2, 9.9, shot 3, 10.0, 4, 5, 6, all near perfect. The crowd roared, clapping between each ping of success. Comments exploded on the live stream, King of Hawthorne. That poor girl's already done. Vanessa Cole laughed, filming from the lounge. Someone call maintenance. We've got a cleanup in lane 8. Ethan turned toward Emma, still standing in the shadows. He raised an eyebrow. Your turn, sweetheart, he said, grinning. And just like that, the range went quiet again. Emma moved to lane 8 like she'd done it 1,000 times, except every eye followed her like she was walking into an execution. The contrast was jarring. No sleek rifle case, no biometric gloves, just her hands bare and steady, and the M1 Garand strapped across her back like a memory too heavy to drop. Someone in the lounge whispered, "It's gonna jam. Watch." Another, "Bet she doesn't even know how to load that thing." She heard none of it, or all of it. It didn't matter. Emma set the rifle down. The metal clink echoed sharp against the marble quiet. She rolled her shoulders once, then began her routine. 1 breath, 2. She loaded the first round with care, not ceremony, but reverence. On screen, the scoreboard reset. Her name blinked in unfamiliar letters: Clark, Emma, Lane 8. The crowd leaned in, and somewhere deep in the system, the range began recording history. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, not to pray, but to center. Her finger found the trigger like it always had, as if the rifle had grown around her hand over decades. She inhaled, held, released, then squeezed. Crack! The sound wasn't louder than anyone else's, but it cut through the lounge like a scalpel. The silence that followed was surgical. A soft, digital chime rang out. The screen blinked once, then locked in 10.0. Dead center. The lounge paused. Someone scoffed. Lucky shot. Another forced a laugh. Even broken clocks hit right twice a day. But their tone had changed. Something inside them shifted, barely noticeable, but real. Emma didn't look at the screen. Didn't smile. She just adjusted her stance as if shot 1 was the start of something inevitable. And somewhere, watching on a hospital screen, her mother exhaled for the first time all day. Emma didn't break rhythm. She breathed again, deep, measured, precise. No theatrics, no dramatics. Just control. Crack! The chime was immediate, digital, undeniable. 10.0. This time the crowd didn't laugh. Vanessa Cole lowered her phone an inch. Tyler Reed, slouched in his leather chair, sat up straighter. Even Ethan's grin faded just slightly. "She's dialed in," someone muttered. "No way she holds that," another replied, though the doubt was louder than the words. Emma didn't flinch. She didn't react at all. The rifle came back to ready position like it had a mind of its own. Her fingers moved with the precision of ritual, one practiced in woods, not in stadiums. A pause, not hesitation timing. 1 shot could be luck. 2 meant something was happening, and everyone in that room just felt the air change. Emma adjusted her grip, slightly subtle, like brushing away a thought. No tremble, no breath wasted. Crack. The chime wasn't just a sound now, it was a statement. 10.0. 3 in a row. The system responded with a soft, celebratory melody, rare reserved for elite shooters. It echoed across the marble like a hymn in a cathedral. This time, no one spoke. Vanessa slowly lowered her scope. Connor Blake stopped mid-snark. Even Derek at the front desk froze, the smirk on his face flickering like a faulty bulb. The room held its breath. Ethan tilted his head, eyes narrowing, not with confidence but with something unfamiliar doubt. Emma exhaled steady, her face blank, her focus absolute. In the background, the live stream chat exploded. 310's "Who is she?" This isn't normal, and for the first time they weren't laughing. The silence wasn't just absence, it was weight now. Emma loaded the 4th round with the same calm exactness, like brushing a page in her father's old journal. Her hands moved like she'd rehearsed this in memory, not muscle. Crack. Chime. 10.0. 4 in a row. This wasn't luck, this was law. Coach Raymond Pierce, the ex-Marine, stood straighter in the back of the room. His clipboard lowered slowly, his jaw set. In the lounge, no one moved. Phones were no longer mocking tools, they were shields, something to hold between themselves and whatever was happening on lane 8. The scoreboard began to pulse with each shot, now animated like even the system recognized it was witnessing something rare. Emma adjusted nothing. Not her stance, not her expression. She wasn't building momentum. She was the momentum. And for the first time the crowd felt it. She wasn't going away. Emma chambered the 5th round like she was flipping a page in time. Still no emotion, still no noise. Crack. Chime. 10.0. The 5th note in the range's rarest melody rang out louder, sharper, almost defiant. Someone dropped a headset. A latte spilled onto leather. Vanessa Cole stood, frozen lips slightly parted. Her manicure trembled as she lowered her phone. The comment she was about to post hung unsent. Tyler Reed blinked, murmuring, "That's 5." The crowd, once buzzing like a hive, now stood in a strange, uncomfortable awe. The air had shifted, from mockery to momentum, to a reckoning. Coach Pierce's clipboard fell against his thigh, forgotten. Emma remained unmoved. Not triumphant, not smug, just steady, like she'd never expected anything else. Somewhere in the control room, the live stream's viewer count tripled. And in the far corner, Ethan Caldwell clenched his jaw because he'd just realized he might actually lose. Crack! The sixth shot rang out like thunder in a cathedral. And then came the chime. Crisp, final 10.0. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't dare. The system chimed again now, layering a harmony reserved only for milestone streaks. The audio flooded the hall. The melody felt holy. In the live stream chat, all hell broke loose. 6. This is a glitch. Nope, that's real. Look at the grouping. Who is this woman? Emma didn't blink. Vanessa's phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the lounge floor. She didn't notice. Coach Pierce whispered to himself. 6. My God. Ethan sat forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked on the scoreboard. His jaw was tight, hands clasped, but his breathing had changed. Shallow, controlled. His confidence hadn't cracked yet, but it was under siege. And still Emma stood there unchanged, not chasing a record, fulfilling a promise. By the time Emma raised the rifle again, the room wasn't just quiet, it was listening. No more smirks. No more phones angled to humiliate. Now they filmed her like a rare eclipse, afraid to blink. Crack. Chime. 10.0. 7. The system's chime had become something else, a drumbeat. Every note felt heavier, like it struck not just the air, but people's pride. A young athlete in the corner who had laughed earlier now whispered, "She's beautiful." Not her looks, her form, her discipline, her refusal to break. Even Vanessa, still frozen, murmured under her breath, "This isn't possible." Ethan didn't move, but his hands were locked so tightly together his knuckles whitened, and across the range, hearts quietly tilted, not just toward Emma's skill, but toward her story, toward the quiet defiance she carried in every bullet. 7 shots in, and somehow she was just warming up. The range felt colder now, not physically but spiritually. Something was breaking. Emma didn't hesitate. Her movements were as steady as they were at shot 1. No theatrics, no ego, just perfect economy. Crack. Chime. 10.0. 8. The scoreboard flashed again, now glowing with a golden pulse. A warning, a countdown, a prophecy. Tyler Reed, who had once joked about Emma cleaning targets, now shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Okay. What is this?" he muttered, voice tight. Mia Hole, the one who had tossed a crumpled scorecard at Emma earlier, folded her arms and looked away. But fear had already crept in, not of the rifle, not of the shots, of being wrong, of watching the myth they built Hawthorne untouchable elitist be dismantled by a woman in a faded jacket. They laughed at her silence. Now they feared it, and she still hadn't missed. Ethan Caldwell had never lost here. Not a challenge, not a single lane. But this wasn't a match anymore. It was a reckoning. Emma loaded the 9th round calm as ever. Her breathing hadn't changed. Neither had her eyes. Crack. Chime. 10.0. The 9th, perfect shot. The room didn't move, didn't speak. Even the live stream comments paused as if awe had reached through the screen and silenced the internet itself. Ethan's smile was gone, his posture rigid. The tips of his fingers tapped his knee in unconscious panic. He watched her not like an opponent, but like a threat to everything he believed in. All his precision, his gear, his training dwarfed by someone the room had mocked minutes ago. Coach Pierce exhaled slow and low. "If she hits 10, he murmured. Ethan already knew. If she hits 10, Hawthorne would never belong to him again. Emma didn't look up, didn't glance at the scoreboard, didn't soak in the awe, because this moment wasn't about them. It was about him, her father. Her fingers moved with reverence. Final round. One breath, one heartbeat, one vow. Crack! The chime didn't just ring at Rose, a sound the system had never made. Triumphant. Absolute. 10.0, perfect center. The 10th bullet didn't just hit the bullseye, it overlapped the first. No deviation. No space. One hole. One truth. The scoreboard flashed 100, 100 new facility record gasps. Then silence. Then applause. Disbelieving, scattered rising. Vanessa's optics slid from her face, her hands trembling. Ethan's eyes locked on the board, lips parted, chest tight. She had done it. 10 shots, 10 truths. And in 1 minute, Emma Clark erased every doubt ever spoken about her. The live stream exploded. She's not a shooter. She's a storm. Emma Clark, legend. The room stood frozen, not in shock, but in reverence. Emma lowered her rifle with the same calm she had carried through all 10 shots. She let the silence stretch, hold, breathe. Then for the first time since entering Hawthorne, she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My father taught me to shoot when I was 6. It cut through the air like her bullets, quiet, direct, unforgettable. He was the best marksman in his unit. They called him Ghost One. She looked at no one in particular, yet everyone felt seen. While some of you were learning to double-click a mouse, I was learning to feel wind at 300 meters. No bitterness, no triumph, just truth. And in that moment, the elite of Hawthorne realized she hadn't just broken their record. She'd shattered their story. For a long moment, Ethan Caldwell didn't move. The crowd still stood in stunned silence. The only sound the soft hum of the scoreboard still glowing with Emma's perfect 100. Then, slowly, Ethan stepped forward. Not with swagger this time, but with weight. The kind that only comes when pride has been stripped away. He cleared his throat, then said loud enough for the live stream to catch, "I was an idiot." The words hit harder than any gunshot. "You're not just better, you're untouchable." His voice cracked not from embarrassment, but clarity. The chat exploded. Whoa, he just admitted it. She broke him respectfully. Ethan looked at her eyes steady now, not competitive, but in awe. "You didn't just win, you changed everything." Emma didn't gloat. She simply gave him a nod, small but genuine. And in that gesture, something shifted in him, too. Across the room where legends used to be made and arrogance ruled, Coach Raymond Pierce the Marine, with ribbons older than most shooters here, rose slowly to his feet. For a man known more for critique than praise, his movement alone was a statement. He didn't speak at first, he just clapped. Once, then again. Each strike of his hands echoed like gunfire. The room followed, hesitant at first, then swelling. A tide of reckoning. The ones who mocked the ones who streamed her humiliation now stood in her honor. Coach Pierce's eyes met Emma's. No judgment, just respect carved from years in the field. "In 40 years," he said, voice low but firm, "I've never seen shooting like that." A pause. "Your father would have saluted you." Emma gave the faintest smile, not pride, not relief, just quiet fulfillment, the kind that comes only after a promise is kept. The sound of polished shoes on marble broke the applause. General Marcus Tate, director of Hawthorne Elite Range, stepped forward. Silver hair, iron posture. A man who'd trained champions and dismissed dozens. He looked not at Emma, but at the crowd. "Today, we witnessed excellence," he said, voice steady, resonant. "And cruelty." He scanned the room. Derek, the smug receptionist, looked down. Professor Vance's arms crossed, stiffened. "This facility honors skill, not bloodlines, not bank accounts." He gestured to the live scoreboard still glowing Emma's name. "Effective immediately. Derek Jennings and Professor Laura Vance are suspended pending review for conduct unbecoming of this institution." Gasps rippled. Tate turned to Emma and gave a crisp, respectful nod. "Ms. Clark has redefined what it means to belong here." A hush followed. Not fear, order restored. Hawthorne, for the first time in years, felt honest. As General Tate stepped back, the giant digital scoreboard above the range shifted. The previous top scorer, Ethan Caldwell, faded to second place. New letters formed slowly, deliberately, as if the system itself needed a moment to process the change. Emma Clark 100, facility record holder. A new banner appeared across the top. Precision is earned. The crowd watched in reverent silence as Emma's name settled into place, not as a guest, not as a mistake, but as a standard. A teenager in the corner whispered, "She's permanent now." Connor Blake, who had once joked about janitors, turned away, cheeks flushed. Even Vanessa Cole sat down quiet, stunned, humbled. The golden glow of Emma's name reflected off the polished marble and into every eye in that room. Not just a title, a legacy. And from that moment on, no one would ever speak her name with doubt again. As Emma's name glowed above them, the ones who once scoffed began to fade, not by force, but by shame. Connor Blake, who'd laughed loudest, slunk toward the exit, his designer tracksuit no longer armor, but a costume. He kept his eyes down as if the floor might forgive him. Mia Hole, once bold enough to toss paper at Emma's boots, quietly folded her gear. Her hands shook slightly as she packed her custom ear protection. Vanessa Cole didn't speak. She simply sat still, staring at the scoreboard, its golden letters reflected in her eyes like a mirror she could no longer escape. Their retreat wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was quiet. Because nothing cuts deeper than being erased by someone they thought didn't belong. Emma hadn't humiliated them. She'd made them irrelevant. And as they disappeared one by one, the room felt cleaner. The live stream feed exploded like a volcanic eruption, comments flooding in from every corner of the world. Emma Clark trended worldwide, her name now etched in every corner of the internet. This is why we need more women in the game. She just made history. She's the real MVP. Respect. Absolute respect. The hashtags were overwhelming. Thousands of tweets, posts, and memes flooded social media. Emma's story was everywhere, crossing time zones and continents as the world watched her break more than a record. She shattered perceptions. A live interview request popped up on the feed from a major sports network. People from all walks of life started tagging her. This is what true strength looks like. Emma's silence had become a symbol of unwavering resolve, a beacon for everyone who was ever dismissed as not good enough. The world had seen her, and they would never forget her. The crowd had dissipated. The cheers had faded. But Emma remained at lane 8, her hands now resting gently on the rifle. From the corner of her eye she saw him. Ethan Caldwell. The golden boy of Hawthorne stood just a few feet away. His perfect posture, his tailored gear. It was all still there, but the arrogance gone, replaced by something new. He approached, hesitant. His usual swagger was muted. Ethan started, but his voice faltered. "I owe you more than an apology." Emma didn't move, didn't speak at first. She just looked at him, her eyes calm, unreadable. Ethan took a deep breath. "You're right. I was an idiot. And I don't think you're just a shooter." Emma's gaze softened just enough to make his heart skip. She nodded slightly, the smallest acknowledgement. "Thanks," she said simply. For once, no sarcasm. No sharp edge, just respect. For a long moment, the space between Emma and Ethan was filled with quiet. The noise of the crowd was distant now, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. Ethan shifted his weight, nervous for the first time in a long while. He cleared his throat, trying to regain some composure. "You know, I don't think I've ever met someone like you," he said, his voice more vulnerable than he intended. Emma finally looked up at him, eyes steady, but there was something warmer now, something that hadn't been there before. "I'm not like you, Ethan," she replied, her tone gentle but firm. "But I'm willing to listen." Ethan smiled, a real smile this time. Not the cocky grin, but one of true admiration. "Would you like to grab a coffee sometime? We could talk about everything. For For the first time that day, Emma's smile met his. "I'd like that." And just like that, the beginning of something new started to take shape. The coffee shop they met at wasn't fancy. No high-end decor, no exclusive menu, just a quiet place where they could talk without the weight of expectations. They sat at a small table by the window. Ethan ordered a black coffee, Emma a simple tea. The conversation flowed easily. They talked about shooting, about growing up in different worlds, about the differences that had once divided them but no longer seemed so important. Ethan shared stories of his privileged upbringing, of the pressure to always be perfect. Emma spoke of her father's legacy, the quiet strength it took to keep moving forward when no one thought she belonged. By the end of the evening, something had shifted not just between them, but within them. They weren't so different after all. "To new beginnings?" Ethan said, raising his cup. Emma smiled, her hazel eyes bright. "To the future." And for the first time, it felt like they were both exactly where they needed to be. As the weeks passed, Emma's name didn't fade. It echoed across the world, growing louder, stronger. What began as one perfect shooting session at Hawthorne had blossomed into something bigger, something that resonated with people from all walks of life. She became a symbol of resilience, not just in shooting, but in life. People who had once been overlooked, dismissed, or judged began to see themselves in her story. Women young athletes, those from humble beginnings, all found inspiration in the quiet, unrelenting force that Emma had shown. Emma didn't seek the spotlight, but it followed her anyway. Her story was shared on podcasts, in articles, and even at high schools where girls who had once been afraid to take up space now picked up rifles with determination. One afternoon, a young girl approached her at a shooting range, her hands trembling slightly. "You made me believe I could," she whispered. Emma smiled, the same steady smile that had silenced the elites. "You already could," she said softly. Months had passed since that day at Hawthorne. Emma and Ethan had walked side by side through life, facing challenges, learning, and growing together. What started as mutual respect had blossomed into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, they stood at the edge of a quiet lake, the world stretched out before them. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. Emma turned to him, her heart racing, but her expression calm. He kneeled, his eyes soft and vulnerable in a way Emma had never seen before. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to truly live, to face every challenge without fear. I want to spend the rest of my life learning, growing, and fighting alongside you." He opened the box, revealing a simple yet beautiful ring. "Will you marry me?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him, then at the life they had built together, the trust, the respect, the love. "Yes," she said, a smile breaking through her calm demeanor. "Yes, I will." And with that, a new chapter began, not just in their lives, but in the legacy they would create together. The day of Emma and Ethan's wedding was everything they had imagined, and more simple, yet profound. They chose a small venue overlooking the mountains where the sky stretched wide, just like the future they were about to build. The ceremony was intimate, filled with close friends, family, and those who had supported them along the way. Ethan stood at the altar, nervous but happy, wearing a suit that no longer seemed too tight, no longer a symbol of his past arrogance. Emma, in a simple white dress, walked down the aisle with a calm smile, her eyes locking with Ethan's. Her father's rifle was with her, a quiet reminder of where she came from, of the strength that had carried her through life's hardest moments. As they exchanged vows, there were no grand speeches, just simple words. "I promise to always stand by you, in all that you are and all that we will become." And when they kissed, the crowd cheered in applause, not just for love, but for the journey they had both traveled. Together they had become more than they ever could have alone. Emma and Ethan's life together was anything but ordinary. As newlyweds, they dove headfirst into the challenges life had to offer, together, not as two separate stories, but as one. Ethan's world of business and Emma's quiet strength became intertwined in ways neither of them had expected. They faced obstacles, both big and small pressures from his family, new expectations from their friends, and the quiet struggle of keeping their love intact while navigating the spotlight. But every challenge felt different now. They weren't competing against each other, they were building together. Whether it was training on the range, attending high-powered meetings, or supporting each other through moments of doubt, they found strength in their partnership. They pushed one another to be better not through force, but through understanding and love. Their story wasn't finished. It was only just beginning, and they faced whatever came next, side by side. As the years passed, Emma and Ethan became a force to be reckoned with, not just in the world of shooting, but in everything they touched. They built a future on mutual respect, determination, and a shared vision that was bigger than their individual dreams. Together, they founded a foundation dedicated to empowering underrepresented groups in the shooting sports world, giving people who, like Emma, had been told they didn't belong a chance to prove their worth. They traveled the world, speaking at events, hosting training camps, and inspiring thousands with their story of resilience, love, and unity. Their partnership became a model for others, showing that when you trust in one another and take on challenges together, there are no limits. They didn't just create a life, they created a legacy. And with every new challenge, every new venture, they knew they were unstoppable. Together. Years went by, and Emma and Ethan's influence only grew. They weren't just athletes or business figures, they had become beacons of possibility for the next generation. They saw young boys and girls pick up their rifles not to follow in Emma's footsteps, but to forge their own paths free from judgment. They watched as young women once sidelined found strength in Emma's journey, knowing they didn't have to fit the mold to succeed. At schools, at shooting ranges, and in communities across the world, their story was shared not as a tale of victory over others, but as a story of self-discovery, courage, and breaking barriers. One day, a young girl with bright eyes approached Emma at a training camp holding a photo. "I want to be like you," she said softly. Emma smiled, her heart swelling. "You already are," she replied. And with that, the cycle of inspiration continued. Years after her groundbreaking victory, Emma's name was still a permanent fixture in the heart of Hawthorne Elite Range. It wasn't just about the record she set, it was about the impact she had left behind. On a quiet afternoon, General Marcus Tate stood in front of the range's digital leaderboard, his eyes fixed on the name that had forever changed the course of Hawthorne's history, Emma Clark 100-100. Facility record holder. The digital display flickered briefly before a new addition appeared. Beneath her name was a plaque, permanent, etched in gold. True champions are not made by wealth, but by resilience, humility, and the courage to defy expectations. Emma had never asked for recognition. But that day, as the plaque was revealed to the public, the entire range paused in respect. Her legacy had come full circle, not as a champion of a sport, but as a symbol of what could be accomplished when no one believed in you. One quiet evening, years after their wedding, Emma and Ethan stood on the balcony of their home overlooking the range they had transformed together. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sprawling fields where it all began. They had been through so much, facing criticism, challenges, and triumphs. Together, they had shattered barriers and built a life and foundation that would inspire generations to come. Ethan turned to Emma, a soft smile on his face. "We did it," he said, his voice full of quiet pride. "Not just the records, not just the titles, but everything we've built together." Emma nodded, her eyes reflecting the same warmth in the sunset. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about showing everyone, including ourselves, that we could create something meaningful. They stood together in the fading light, hands intertwined, knowing their journey wasn't over. Their legacy wasn't just in their achievements, it was in the world they had changed. As the years passed, Emma and Ethan knew their journey wasn't just about breaking records, it was about creating lasting change. Their foundation continued to grow, empowering young athletes, especially women, to pursue their dreams without the weight of societal expectations. But they weren't stopping there. Emma had begun speaking at global events advocating for equal opportunities in sports, while Ethan used his platform to champion causes beyond the shooting range. They started a new initiative teaching the values of discipline, resilience, and self-belief in underserved communities. They weren't just focusing on the present, they were laying the groundwork for a future where anyone regardless of their background could pick up a rifle or chase a dream and say, "I belong." One evening, as they walked through a local youth training camp they had funded, Emma turned to Ethan. This is just the beginning," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. And for the first time in years, both of them felt the thrill of starting again. As the years passed, Emma and Ethan's love didn't just endure, it grew deeper. They had built something together that was far more significant than records and awards. They had crafted a legacy of resilience, love, and belief in each other's strength. Their story had inspired millions, but it was the quiet moments, the shared smiles over morning coffee, the laughter on difficult days that defined their bond. They never stopped challenging each other. Ethan had learned to listen to appreciate the power of silence and determination. Emma had found a partner who didn't need her to be anything other than herself, someone who supported her dreams without question. One evening, sitting under the stars, Emma took Ethan's hand, her eyes glowing with quiet joy. "We've created something real," she said softly, "and we're just getting started," he replied, squeezing her hand. Their love was not just a chapter, it was a forever story, one that would inspire the world for generations to come. The end.